Senator Pinsky.
Well, I want to echo my ideological bedfellow's comments. I, too, had my first notes I drafted were about Britt's comments about 15 or 20 minutes ago, that we're creating something very different, that our recommendations are more science-based and successful practices. It's not about block grants to the locals. We are doing a different paradigm, and I think rather than decide whether accept the existing structure or new one, we should talk about what our interests are in this leadership body, and that should define where we move. And I think they're very different. So it might imply some of my thinking, but I jotted down a few items. One, they obviously have to have full buy-in of the Commission's recommendations. It shouldn't be ideological. We want to stay away from it being ideological. It's about the process and the politics of this document and the belief in data-driven and science-based practice and success. I believe that some of the people need experience in education management, not just experience in education, but education management, whether it's a former superintendent or a president of a higher ed institution, as well as some education policymakers and others. I also think that we need people who can say no, who believe in the accountability issue. If, in fact, we are going to change the current paradigm where it's essentially locally driven to that's being shared with this new document of leadership from the state, from the commission, it is a different paradigm, and it's going to require someone who's not just going to go with the same old, and I think there's always a pressure dynamic to do that, which I think Checker referred to. I also think this body has to be agile, not laid down by too many people or too difficult to get meetings, but an agile body. And there may be others, we might want to take some of these off the list, but I think if we define what this group, what skills and skill set they should have, that'll tell us whether the current board or this new EDCO fits that category. And I think there's some shortcomings, but we could talk about that. But I think the clearer we are in what we want this body to do and why we want them will define whether we're going to select 5 or 7 new independent people or go with one of the existing structures. And Mr. Secretary, on one hand you say we have to break some eggs, on the other hand you say we should start from this legislation. You can't have it both ways, and I think we have to break eggs, and it has to come from this document. And the people who believe in it and will implement it and have the experience to do that, and in some cases say no, I think is what we're looking for. So that would be another approach that I would put out there. So I think we should be open and not start from the model, but we should, existing models or what the solution should be, but what do we believe this body should have the authority to do. Now, on the list of the 10 or 15 items, look, I think some of those should go back to the State Department of Education. I think they are in better shape to do that, and I think at subsequent meetings we should walk through these and say which should be with this body and which, in fact, should stay with the department, and I think this will have to be shifted. But I think they're two separate questions.
The sort of conceptual, that's very helpful. I like your conceptual framework for what is it we expect. What are the capabilities that would be needed to provide this kind of oversight is a good starting point. That's I think it's very helpful.